I'm Mandy Yarkich from Creative Matters, and you're listening to Creative Matters on Air, where I have conversations with new and established artists from around New Zealand. I love to listen to artists' stories and learn about their creative process, and maybe you do too, which is why I've made this podcast, to inspire, inform and educate. I hope you can take away something positive and encouraging from each of these amazing stories to help you on your own creative journey. Morena, and welcome to Creative Matters. Thank you very much for being here. Today I am speaking with Fraser Williamson, also known as Fraz. Fraser has had a love of art since he was a young boy and has been creating incredibly distinguishable paintings and illustrations for 35 years. In the early 90s, he became known as Red Shark Art and Illustration, putting his dreams and musings to canvas and his love of diversity and the quirky to paper for children's books. Fraser sees himself as a magpie picking up ideas and styles anywhere from Mesopotamian bas-reliefs to underground comics. The ocean, family, beach life, time spent in Tonga and Spain are constantly reflected in his work. Fraser creates wondrous narrative scenes, some of which he doesn't understand himself. We had a really fun chat on a blustery Muriwai day about his wild dreams that end up making appearances in his work, the way he sits in a cafe and collects ideas from a random magazine, snippets of conversations or passers-by while he's drinking his coffee, and his dream of writing and illustrating his own books, and his amazing narrative painting process, amongst many other things. I really love meeting the fabulous Fraser, and I'm sure you'll enjoy and relate to many aspects of his fascinating story. You can see his images on Creative Matters blog, creativematters.co.nz, and also he has a website, redshark.co.nz. Hi, Fraser.
Hi, Mandy.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much for coming all the way out to Muriwai on a very gusty, blustery day.
No, it's gorgeous. I sat down to the beach for a wee while and had a little watch of the kite surfers down there.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So welcome to Creative Matters.
Thank you. Yes.
So let's get straight into it, as we always do. Can you tell us, I know that you were born on the North Shore and your dad was a quite well-known doctor, Dr. Williamson from Devonport. And so I actually, in my 20s, was flatting in Devonport and kind of knew of your family. And I think I did meet one of your brothers at some point. So can you tell us what kind of childhood you had and how your dad as a doctor felt about your creative soul?
Right. Interestingly, I was the only one that wasn't born in Devonport, actually, Mandy. All the others were. Dad had his first internship at Thames Hospital, so I was born down there, and then we came back. But all the other three were born down there. We had a very beachy childhood. It was, we lived down in Cheltenham, so we spent our entire life in the water and fishing and diving and that sort of thing. How my parents felt about my creative thing, I'm not too sure. I think they were very they were quite keen on a professional life, and it perhaps wasn't their ideal first choice, but it was something that I always sort of wanted to do. It took me a long time to get round to it, eventually to do creative work professionally. It took me a long time to get there. And I did about every kind of job you can imagine getting there. I was half trained as a psychiatric nurse, and I worked in a book warehouse for years, and I trained as a teacher, a secondary school teacher, art and art history. But it was just something that I'd always naturally inclined to. So I'd always drawn, and I if asked, I would always have said that that's what I would like to do. And so, but it took me quite a while. It took me quite a while to get there. Probably not when I was about 30. I think I finally started coming around to it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And great that you finally got there, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not everybody does.
No.
And so, what sort of things were you creating as a teenager and as a younger kid?
All sorts of things. I just naturally like to draw. I naturally drew, and so I drew and painted, and I made things too. I enjoyed the garage. I used to, I made a little light box once and that kind of thing. I loved getting in the garage and making things, and but I would draw a lot. I'd paint a lot. I've still got a big folio of stuff from way back. I've got just about everything I've ever done. I think I still got it in my plan drawers.
Oh, amazing.
But it was very random. I just whatever I felt like and whatever was interesting to me. And it was very, very much not a professional thing. I think there's quite an interesting change from doing something as a pleasurable hobby to something professional. It becomes quite a different thing after a while. It becomes work, and you can tire of it.
Yeah, exactly. It has
like anything.
It has a bit of a change. I'm just going to let my dog out. As always, she's decided to join us. Okay, so the dog's out. There's a lot of wind happening as well. Hopefully we won't hear that. Can you tell us, Fraser, about art at high school for you?
Yes, it was something that I pursued right through high school, but especially later. Once I got to the sort of seventh form year, it was, as I say, it was 74. It was 1974 when I was getting towards the end of high school, and the art teaching was reasonably formal. And so I was sort of chafing at it a little bit by the time I got to the end. But I wanted to go to the ATI to do graphic arts. So I essentially went around and told all my teachers, I'm sorry, but I'm not doing any of my other subjects. I'm just going to do this art portfolio for the rest of the year. And I did that, and I bought a radiogram and I put it into the seventh form common room for some unknown reason. They let me do that, and I drove all the academic types nuts by playing Frank Zappa records and things like that all through that. I think they finally made me stop. But so I did a portfolio there, and I put that into the ATI, and I got accepted for the ATI. I think that was 75 around about that I went to the ATI.
That's actually quite a smart move, at that time, to be able to focus, but to go to school to do the work, but not have to do the exam, I guess.
No, yeah. They just basically they just left me alone. They just let me do it. So I just drew day and night. So I put together quite a nice. So I still got all the pieces, I think, from that portfolio at home, or quite a few of them. Even
at that age, you were quite sort of comfortable in your style and knew what you wanted to make.
Style was a little different, but yes, in some ways, if I look back at the older work, there was definitely the germ of what I'm doing now was there right at the beginning. I love that sort of that illustrative, a certain kind of what it was, a narrative sort of illustrative look, which is in my work now, was there even then. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you got into ATI, and then what happened from there?
I did ATI for a while, but they eventually, unfortunately, they had to ask me to leave because I was how would you put it? My youth was a little wild and ready, and so I was not particularly cooperative, and I was perhaps more of a distraction to other people than they preferred. So I think that was in fact the reason they gave me. They said, you're making it difficult for other people. Would you like to go and do something else?
Funny.
So I left, but it did give me a really good foundation in basic sort of paint skills and things like that. I could work with gouache and paint, which I did for most of or a good 2/3 of my illustrating career. I've used gouache, and then I developed into doing digital work because I'd done it for so long. I was just actually tired of doing it. So I started doing digital work, which I've been doing up until now. So yeah,
that's great. And I guess, did you find it was actually hard at ATI being told what to do when you were already kind of following your own path a little bit, or was it more just being wild child?
More the latter, I think. more being the wild, but it was difficult. I've always chafed a little at being told what to do. I'm not a great person with authority. I don't do too well with it, and that's probably something you need to grow into or grow out of.
Yeah, or maybe not.
Or maybe not. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
But I've always been very, very, in some ways, kind of. Determined wouldn't be quite the right word, but I've always very much had an eye on where I wanted to go. So I've made choices along the way which have been very particular for doing what I want to do. And it's meant that I've had to be quite flexible. I've done a few school talks where kids have asked me about that, and I said, well, chances are you're not going to be a millionaire, but you're going to have a life that you enjoy. And it's, if you're doing illustration, if you make the same kind of choices I made, my wife and I have always laughed to say, how far can we downsize to actually do what we both do? And quite a long way,
Yeah.
it seems.
That's so good. I mean, it's a great way to live, isn't it? Just doing something that you're so passionate about.
Yes, yeah. You've got that. That's always been my primary choice. Yeah. But I've been lucky too. I've also in the illustration sense, in the early days, I've been very lucky. I've always earned quite well for quite a long period of time, and now we've sort of swapped roles. Lois is now earning well. I'm earning less, and so I am able to paint more now because of that. So it's an interesting transition. So we've both sort of taken that role at various different times. But at the moment, she's the prime breadwinner. I'm the cook and bottle washer.
So good. How brilliant. And it's quite interesting, isn't it, Fraser, that you have these sort of two, it's almost like two art practices that kind of connect but are also slightly different.
Yes.
With the illustration and the painting.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you talk to us about your illustration first, because that's what came first, and how you got into that and how you developed your Red Shark business, and then we can talk about the painting.
Okay. I worked at Penguin Books for quite a while, and it was Longman Paul at the time too, Penguin Books and Longman Paul, as a warehouseman, and a job came up there as in the graphic arts area, and I applied for it because I knew that I had the skills for it, but they couldn't quite imagine me out of the warehouse and in the office. That wasn't they couldn't see that, so I left and I got a job at the Pacific Island Resource Centre, and it was a good friend of mine, Ian McNee, was working there, and we did bilingual readers, and they had a newspaper and things like that. We produced those there, but he also was doing children's books with a number of publishers, and so he very kindly introduced me to all the people that he knew. So I put together a portfolio of what I thought might be appropriate, and went and met two or three of the people that he worked with, and I almost immediately got a job. So it was really good. I got two pieces of work, and then I almost had too much work to have another job, but not quite enough to earn a living. So I had to just basically launch off and hope for the best. And so I've been doing it ever since. And so it was great. The first book I did was a Joy Cowley book, interestingly, called The White Horse, and I still have all the drawings and the sketches and everything from that. That was my first book, and then I think I got something from Polly Fawkes, was the designer at Longman Paul. She gave me a lot of really nice work doing interesting illustration work for their textbooks and things like that. So I just launched off into that, and I just progressively got to know different publishers, and eventually doing the school journals and things like that. I did a lot of work for the still do that work now to this day. So
there's still such a thing as school journals? There
are still school journals. Yeah, the government, they had a place called Learning Media, and they did it as a government thing for quite a while. And then they, for some unknown reason, decided that the government shouldn't be involved in doing school literature. For some, I have no idea why they decided, but they did. So that they put it out to tender as a commercial venture, and so people had to tender for it. And Lift Education are the ones that have been doing that since then. They got the first tender, and I think they've won it since. So I'm still working with them and a couple of satellite businesses that work around them. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And so how does that? I mean, we can talk about your business in a minute and how you started that, but the actual process of illustrating a book, how does that work?
They'll send you they'll decide if there's something that they think is appropriate for your style. They send you the text and a layout. So you get text and layout, and progressively as they get to know you better, they give you less and less instructions, but they'll give you pretty decent. I don't mind any level of instructions in terms of content, but as soon as it gets into style, we start having a problem, because there's some people would start on, I don't like the noses on the side, and I don't like the two eyes, and so I have run into strife and have lost work because I haven't wanted to compromise on what I do style wise, but content wise they give you a pretty good brief. You then sketch out the pages and send them down in rough form. And usually I can do it quite roughly these days. It's pretty wild and ready when I see.
And you're still hand drawing those?
Still hand drawing all the roughs, yes. Yeah, still doing that. I still love doing the hand drawing. So then you send it to them. They come back. You do a little backwards and forwards where they approve the thing and say, oh, we're not so sure about this. Can you do this and that? And then when they agree on the content, then I get to illustrating it, and I sit down. And what I used to do was then I'd paint it up with gouache on good art paper, and then I'd basically box it up and mail it to them, and they do all the scanning and everything like that. So not being a great business tycoon, I lost most of my work. It all disappeared into various vaults. I think they've probably still got massive amounts of it in various places. Some people just abandoned the warehouses, and I had a person who sent me a whole lot of stuff from Australia from one of the publishing companies who basically just abandoned the warehouse of all their artwork.
Wow.
And this person went in, they saw some of my work and rang me and said, oh, would you like it? So they sent it back to me. But so then they do all the publishing thing. But these days, of course, you just do the thing and I come down and I produce it digitally. So I do the digital thing and I just send it on down the wires, put it on one of the where you can send a decent sized file.
Yeah.
I put it on one of those formats. And
it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And with digital, do you still do a quick drawing to start with?
Yep.
And then how do you process the digital side?
It's a bit clunky, really, because I have even my digital work is very manual. It's just like I call it scratch and fill, you know. It's not exactly. I haven't got great techniques in terms of I do it in Photoshop, but I haven't got great techniques on Photoshop. But I tend to I like doing a pencil drawing to send the final roughs off to them. I like doing quite a refined pencil drawing so I can actually get everything right now. And what I then do is go over again with the squeaker and redo it all again as a sort of almost a digital template, which is you got all the details are gone. You just got basic shapes and the things you want, and then I stick it in and I work it on Photoshop till I'm happy with it. I get in a little bit of strife because I'm not a great person with all the Photoshop techniques like layers and things. I tend to do it as a piece of art, and I send it down when they're coming back and saying, "Oh, can you redo the grass a different color?" No, I can't. Either that or I've got to spend hours diddling around with it.
Yeah. It's hard to find sort of that part of the digital painting, I suppose, sometimes to just make a quick change.
Oh yeah,
it's not
that
simple.
Well, if somebody's really good on all their layers, of course, they can just pick the right place and they do it. But I'm not great at that. So, but I tend to tell people, I give them warning in advance that they're going to get a piece of illustration, not necessarily some layered files. They can, because they quite like to fool around it with themselves as well,
which would be quite hard as an artist, wouldn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Well, I'm reasonably pragmatic. Once it's off my plate, and they're doing the publishing, I tend to forget about it to a certain degree. Yeah.
So when did you start Red Shark, in that sort of through that process? When did you get to your own business?
My brothers Matthew and Luke started a business which they originally called Tradewinds Publishing, and we began working together. And so I think in the middle of that process, I'd done a big painting with a big, huge red shark in it, and somebody had just offhandedly suggested that would be a good name for a business. So I just grabbed it, and I just called myself Red Shark Illustration, and we ran a business together, but did slightly different work. But we collaborated on a lot of things. If they needed illustration, if I needed design, we had a collaboration for quite a long time, and then my Matthew and Luke wanted to move on to doing a couple of different things. They wanted to do, geographically, they wanted to move, and also they wanted to change the sort of the accounting system stuff. And to this day, I still have a pencil and a book. Just because
ledger.
Well, I think I've got one invoice a month at the moment or something like that. So it's not exactly,
gosh.
or two, so we eventually kind of just, even though we still collaborated a lot of time, we just separated our business practice a little bit, and the others, they both moved northwards, and I stayed in Auckland, and but I became Red Shark Illustration then, and so I've been running that ever since. And then I sort of upgraded it to Red Shark Art and Illustration when I started painting, which sort of came out of the illustration practice,
right.
really.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And how did you find? I mean, as running your own business, were you continuing to do obviously the school journals and new books and that kind of thing? Did the work just kind of keep ticking along?
It did. It did. And there was a massive amount of publishing in the 80s in New Zealand where say Wendy Pye and Shortland Publications, people like that, they were doing massive amounts of books for overseas. They were doing huge programs for overseas. So there was a lot of work. And then suddenly that whole publishing thing, I can't really even quite remember why it was, but that whole publishing thing changed, and then a lot of that work disappeared. I think it was a sort of one of those things where a lot of big businesses overseas, they amalgamated and shifted their businesses away from New Zealand and put them into different countries. And they wanted New Zealand as a place where they could sell books, but they didn't want any of the production done here. So an awful lot of the production and the illustration, I ended up doing a little bit of work where I followed those companies overseas and said, well, I can still do the work if you're interested. And I got a little bit, but they were fairly parochial, you know. The Australian and American market is fairly parochial. They tend to like using their own people. And so an awful lot of that work was gone. So it changed. And then I did a lot of work for well, who was it that did all the school journals? Damn, I just did it a minute. Learning Media, thank you. Learning Media. And so I did a lot of work with them, and but I still did okay. You know, I still did okay. I still had plenty of work, and then it slowly wound down a little bit, and I sort of I became more interested in painting, really, but it has been a combination of both. I'm still doing both at the moment. I just finished a book about a week or two ago. Just finished a book for Lift, and so now I'm on to painting for the art fair coming up, and for a couple of other projects.
Yeah, that's so good. And I mean, I guess you're, you can tell that it's the same artist that's making the illustration and the painting. Yeah. So it feels quite linked, but it's still kind of different. So how, what are the similarities, do you think, in the differences between illustration and your painting?
Illustration work is very prescriptive because you have a book and you have a particular thing you're doing. You know, Harry goes to the park, and so you've got Harry, you've got the park, you've got the dog. It's very you know what the subject matter. Whereas your own paintings, you very much, and this is what I found a little bit tricky with it when I first started, but not so much now, was you sort of got you got the old blank canvas syndrome where you're looking at a big white piece of paper and you've got to come up with the idea, the content, and everything that's in it. So I tend to have a sort of a the illustration was very much in fact interesting you saying that they're similar because kids notice it. You know, I can see kids go into the gallery and they're sitting there looking at the painting, and you can see them looking, and they know they've seen it before, and they'd ask. They quite often they're smart about it. Yeah, they ask. They just say, do you do the school journals? And I say, yes, I do. You know, and they say they know the work, because I think schools are teaching sort of visual literacy these days too. They're teaching kids to be aware of who's done the illustration, what it looks like, and that kind of stuff, rather than just the story. So, but
that's so good.
Yes, but the paintings are very interesting because you've got to come up with your own content. And I've got a little thing which I do, which is my own way of. People think I'm skiving, but I go to a cafe and I sit down at a cafe with a cup of coffee and I'll get anything. I don't really care what it is, a magazine or something, and I kind of almost switch my head back to a slightly different area, and I'll scan the magazine in a sort of a very open sort of way, and anything that intuitively appeals to me, I'll start sketching it, and it's amazing if you can spend an hour or two doing that, how often I can get almost an entire drift of an exhibition just out of one cup of coffee. I'll sit down there and I'll be drawing, and I've got a little book which I've got stuff in, and then I'll run back through it and I'll look through and I'll pick things out of it. That's what I'm doing at the moment for the art fair at Eden Park. I'm picking out in the park. Yeah, I'm picking out bits and putting them together. And I also, like William Burroughs, you know, he used to cut all his text up and throw it on the floor and redo it. Well, I do that too. I sometimes just randomly put things together and swap them around or cut things out and stick them on. I do things like that till I get something visually satisfying. Well, and also dreams. I have a very I've got a very ongoing practice of I write down dreams, so I'm quite good at picking them up, and I've got a good dream journal, and I write them down, and often do a little sketch when I'm doing it, and so it'll be a combination of those, whatever kind of almost is spiritually going on, whatever I've gleaned from doing sketching out and about in the field in the cafe, and whatever's going on with my dream life. I put those three together, and they seem to, and they make up so an awful lot of the images in my paintings are dream images, which I think are interesting just intrinsically. You don't even have to add anything to them.
Yeah, and they're often a little bit quirky, which I think you could use that word to describe your work.
It could be definitely used to do that. Yes,
and a bit sort of unusual, unexpected, I guess, in parts.
Yes.
And when you're in the cafe, do you actually watch the people and sort of draw them up as well? Sometimes, or the
I can do.
on?
Oh, sometimes, yeah. I listen to conversations, and you pick up little snippets of conversation, because I like writing a little bit too. I'm sort of busy writing various things, which that would be my kind of. That's my aim for the next couple of years, is to try and write a couple of things of my own, because I've been doing books for other people endlessly, and I would love to do a couple of books of my own, but they seem to go in some really weird direction. Like I don't know if they're children's books at all. I started writing something on royalty, and I've got this savage piece on royalty and how weird I find it, and I don't know if it's ever going to translate into a children's book. It might have to be something else, but it would be visually interesting.
Oh, it'd be amazing. And there's those there's that other sort of, not the children's books, but the other genre that's like, what do they call it? That's sort of picture books, but it's more mature.
Yeah,
like teenagers, or there's a sort of other in between genre that you could aim it for, I guess.
There was a person I met once who was an Australian illustrator. I can't remember his name offhand, but he was like that. He said, I just write books and then I just publish them. And he said children love them, but other people don't think they're appropriate. But the children actually love them. So he doesn't have any kind of audience in mind, which I think probably is a better way to go.
And I guess the publishers and the sort of retailers kind of sort that out a little bit. They end up placing it where they feel it fits, which you can leave that to them, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is good. Oh, that's so interesting. And for someone who hasn't seen your paintings, Fraser, how would you describe how they look? I mean, they're obviously very narrative.
They are.
Coming from those different areas you've just spoken about. But, visually, how would you describe them?
I remember somebody once described them as very busy, which I wasn't particularly fond of, but they are. I think they're like little stories or little narratives. They can often have 4 or 5 scenes in the painting. You have an ongoing scene, and they're, as I say, because of the way I sometimes construct them, they could have 4 or 5 completely different things going on in them. But I tend to construct something that I like visually, and then I let everybody else make up their mind what they like about it. But there's like a little visual parable almost, I would say. They're a story, and you can glean out of them whatever you like. I've got my own ideas about what I think about them, but I've had people who've bought my paintings who have had very, very different ideas about it. So I tend not to tell people what I think about the content these days if I can help it, because I had one guy, he'd been quite unwell. I think he'd had some form of cancer. I don't know what it was, but he'd gone through this quite long process and come into a good long-term recovery. And he said all the images in the painting spoke to him about the journey he'd been on. And you don't want to tell him what you were thinking of.
No,
ate too much
right.
cheese and had a dream, and wrote the thing. You don't want to tell them what you think about that, because their experience of it is far more interesting.
That's right, and it's so sort of deeply personal to them, the way they're connecting to your work.
Yes,
it sort of almost spoils it if they end up knowing the story.
Someone came to the Art in the Park last year, and they said they'd bought one of my paintings, and I started talking about. They'd asked me what were you thinking about when you're drawing, and as I was talking, I could see on her face that whatever it was, I just shut up really quickly, because I could see it really wasn't registering.
Yeah,
she'd obviously had some completely different sort of idea and take on it. So I tend to try and avoid that if at all possible. Yeah,
that's really interesting. And do you ever find that, when you're showing with your gallery, the Flagstaff Gallery, do they ever sort of do they ever feel like they need a description of the work in that sort of gallery forum? I have been asked to do that, often have been asked to do that, but what I tend to do is almost try and put something
in the same vein as the actual images themselves. I do something slightly more poetic, and I do it very. It's really broad, and it's not specific. No.
Yeah.
And these days, I actually haven't been asked to do that for a while, so I tend not to do that.
Yeah, well, they know that's not your style.
No,
not your way, which is quite good.
No.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about staying with the gallery for so long. So how long have you been with Flagstaff?
Gosh, that's a very good question. Wow, 20 something years, 25 years perhaps.
That's amazing.
I can't remember whether when EC and I have been married for, I think it'll be 23 years this year. Was I painting when we were first married? I don't know if I was. I think maybe I was. I was just getting started. Yeah, maybe I'd done one exhibition before we got married. So 23, 24 years. Yeah,
and that's Flagstaff Gallery in Devonport, where you
it is.
Grew up.
Yes,
which
indeed.
is pretty cool, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a nice connection.
It is a nice connection. I knew the woman who owned the gallery, and I went down with a painting and said to her, because I thought, well, maybe she might be receptive, and I said to her, look, if I do 3 or 4 of those, will you put them up? And she said, yes, I will. And so I did, and they sold all of them, bingo, in about a day.
Oh my gosh.
They just went boom, straight out the door. So that's been that.
Yeah, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. They were very happy with that, obviously.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
And it's very affirming, I guess, when you have that kind of reaction from people.
Oh, it was remarkable. Yeah. It's like the art in the park itself. It's like going to the art in the park where suddenly you're going and you're very nervous. You're thinking, oh, no, everybody's going to buy everything else and walk straight past me. And suddenly you've sold, 4 or 5 works. And it's just, it was I felt quite emotional about it afterwards, actually. And it was very affirming, as you quite rightly say, because it suddenly you thought, oh, okay. And what it was, interestingly, it was affirming because it had a number of different styles in there. I do a sort of a monotone thing that I do sometimes too. I think one piece on the blog is a long piece with a white horse in it and things like that. And that was the first piece to sell. So it was really affirming in very different styles. I had 3 or 4 different things that I'd done for that, and everybody liked all of it, which was fantastic. So
good.
It gave me a real sort of permission to go and explore all those areas.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Coming up to the next one.
So good. And so your use of colour, I mean, how would you describe how you use colour? Apart from obviously some of them are more, a limited colour palette.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some of them are pretty bright, aren't they?
They are.
And is it, would you say flat colour or?
It is quite flat colour. It's when I used to paint in gouache when I was doing children's books, I used to get accused of doing digital work. People say, oh, we don't take digital work because it was so refined and so precise. I like very flat, and I like very... I like a really particular coverage of paint on the canvas. I like or board. I use these days. I like a very nice flat, almost like a pastel-y look, but trying to get enough colour out of it too. Sometimes because I used to work on black, I'd paint the whole canvas black first and work into black. Sometimes they can get a bit greyish, so you've really got to work hard to make sure you bring out enough colour in those. I looked at a couple of those at various times, and they sort of began to get like that. So you've really got to work hard to bring something out of it. And I've just finished one now, which was very much like that, but I really put the colour into it, and it was what I wanted was a monotone that had colour in it, but it was weirdly colourful by the end of it. It just didn't quite do the monotone. But you can see, if you can see the monotone aspect to it. It has a sort of an interesting flatness about certain areas, but with these very big pops of colour in it. So I tend to do something different every time, to be honest with you. The paintings tend to do their own thing, I find. I start on something and I get partway into it and I think, I have no idea what I'm doing here, no idea whatsoever. And every time I do a painting, virtually, it's doing its own thing. So it tends to progress in its own way.
Which is different to your illustration work, I guess.
Oh, very different to the illustration work.
And I guess that's quite liberating in a way when you've been used to having more of a brief.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. No, this is the style of it. I did one a while back which sold at the last exhibition at the Flagstaff, and it was just completely different. I said to Lois, I have no idea what I'm doing here. This is a completely different painting, and it's just asking for different things to be done with it, different way of doing the paint. And I mean, I'm normally quite precise. I'll sit down and I'll draw the thing out, I'll grid it up and I'll draw it out precisely. And suddenly this one just didn't want to do that at all. I had to actually almost freehand the thing and paint what I wanted and where I wanted as I was going. So
wow.
Terrified the pants off me.
Yeah, but quite, as I said, quite sort of freeing too in some ways.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, and then how do you actually build a painting? I mean, you obviously don't have the story sort of completely mapped out. You don't know exactly where you're heading with it to start with.
No, well, I do. I have been reasonably precise in drawing the thing out quite often, and sometimes a bit looser. Like the one I'm working on right now, I found a couple of pieces in my two little journals, my coffee shop journal and my dream journal, and I really decided which was on the left and which looked best, and I just sellotaped them together and then worked straight off that onto drawing the thing up. But trying to leave significant areas where I've actually just got to work straight on it with the paint and not have everything too spelt out. But it's changing. It changes. But I have had for a long time very precise, where I'll draw the thing out, grid it up, draw it on there, and it's very particular. But the main thing is just the actual delivery of the painting, how it actually looks in the end. It's got to have a particular look to make me happy, and it has that in varying degrees. I can do series of bits and pieces of work where I'm looking at and just going, whatever it is, it just isn't happening, and then other ones are. But interesting, the ones that I always think are really happening, the ones that I really like, are usually the ones that take the longest to sell. I have no idea what people are going to like. I'll put them all up, and all the ones I don't like, they're all gone, or like less than the others. They all disappear, and the ones I love, they sit there for years.
And what is it that you love about those paintings?
They just have a certain resonance to them, visual. I just look at them and they're singing the right song. I don't know what it is. There's something about it visually is appealing to me. The colours sit right, it has the right feeling to it, but you say there's no predicting. I've had pieces that I've wanted to paint over, and then next week they've sold. So who knows?
So Fraser, what are you working on at the moment?
I'm working on a series of paintings. I've got 3 things coming up this year. I've got Art in the Park at Eden Park in September, and then there's a group exhibition at the gallery right after that, I think October. And then next February, there's a little exhibition at the Beehive at the Parliament, and that was going to be this year, but due to various problems and COVID things and stuff like that, they've put it off. But so that'll be a series of paintings down there. They're getting some of the members of Parliament who are picking a gallery from their area, and that gallery is picking 2 or 3 people who will then produce some paintings and put them up for I think that's about a month at a time down at Parliament. So that'd be quite fun. We'll be going down for a little opening. Yeah,
so you've been invited by Flagstaff Gallery.
Yes, been invited by Flagstaff. A Cultural Narratives, I think, is the name of the Cultural Narratives. So that'll be interesting. So that sits very nicely with what I do. So I'll just have to think about how to do that.
And will they invite people in to have a look? Will it be like a public exhibition?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. Yeah. Presumably, yes. Yeah.
Great. So you've got heaps of deadlines, which is kind of good. Keeps you honest.
So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm working for the art fair, and I'm working on about 3 pieces at the same time at the moment, which I normally don't do. Normally I just work through one, finish one, do the next. But I've just kind of got a lot of ideas at the moment. I'm trying to sort of muck around with different things, and one of the things I started doing last year was doing some I'd been doing the same process for quite a while, which was quite precise and quite carefully drawn out, and I was getting it was beginning to feel a bit tight, so I thought I'll just get I've got a nice big ream of paper in my plan drawer, so I hauled out a nice big piece of paper, and I thought I'm just going to actually belt into it and pick a sketch that I like the look of, go straight at it and do the sketch exactly as it is, almost on the page, because often you go from your sketch to your finished piece and it all tightens up and it all starts getting so I thought I'll just try really carefully to try and big brush, long arm, and actually draw it fairly loosely. So I sort of did a wash on the paper, and then I did almost in the same wash color, but it's slightly darker, an underpainting of all the shapes and where everything goes, and then a slightly darker shape again, which actually picked it out more precisely. And then I used black, and I painted all the shadows and all the dark areas into the painting first, and then went in with the color after that. And I was sort of 3/4 of the way through finishing it, and one day I sat down and looked at it, and I thought, actually that thing's finished. And I was going to paint the whole thing right over and remove all the underpainting, but in fact actually, and there's a couple of pieces on the blog, you can see that the underpainting is left there. You can see the little black or the dark greyish sort of drawing underneath. So I left it because I suddenly thought, no, I actually really like those pieces of drawing. And so I did 2 pieces like that. So now I'm doing some more like that. So I'm doing 2 more pieces like this, and then I frame them so that they're actually framed pieces and done like that. Nice. Trouble with that is, of course, is as soon as you start, you know that you're leaving stuff, it immediately tightens up, and you immediately start trying to plan for it. Whereas the first one was almost spontaneous, where I sat down one day and thought, oh, that looks good like that. But there's no avoiding that. You've just got to try and do your best with that. So I'm working on that at the moment, and I've just finished I've always wanted 2 long pieces which would match, one a monotone and the other quite colourful. So I finished the colour piece, and I'm just working on a monotone piece at the moment. I'm just trying to decide whether to. I've normally just done them black and white, but I'm kind of tempted to do this one with a blue tone in it. So it's like almost like a blue monotone, bluish monotone. So, but it'll have to be one more colour. But I'm thinking about it. I'm pondering whether that's
so good.
Yeah. So I've drawn that up. It's all drawn up. So that's that. When I get back home this afternoon, that's exactly what I do. Is I'll sit down, and I've got a particular section which I pretty much know where I'm going with it. So I'll start that, and if it's disastrous, then I can paint it over with black and start again, because there's nothing drawn on there anyway. It's just going to be bush. So
and that's the great thing about painting, that you can actually just start again. Paint up the top.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm fussy about textures, so I get out the sandpaper. If I make a mistake sometimes, and then even if there's little lumpy bits I'm not happy with it, I sandpaper it and then black it over.
You do like it nice and flat.
I do. That's why I like. That's why I use board. I got Frames by Daniel Daniel makes these really lovely frames which are wood with MDF on top, so they're super fine, and so they're just some of my other painting friends laugh at me because I've got these, almost like the Salvador Dali single hair brush, I'm in there with these tiny wee brushes, and if you take 2 steps back, you can't even see what's there. But that's just the way I that's what I love doing. I've got a really nice, tiny brushes, and none of my brushes are particularly big. I'm not a bold painter.
That's interesting, isn't it? How people talk about how you should be using that big open arm, and and there's no rules really. It's just what lights your own fire, I guess.
Yeah, well, when we were at ATI, we used to have to do an exercise where we used to have a pencil tied to the end of a bamboo stick, and we used to have to draw on an enormous piece of paper on the wall and try and do that, which is entertaining in itself. But I'm the polar opposite to that these days.
Yeah, it's not the way you like to work.
No, I'm in there with my glasses and the small brush,
Which can be difficult, that sort of small, detailed work when your eyesight is starting to play tricks on you.
Yes, my glasses are getting stronger and stronger. Yeah. And it's sometimes, but also you got to be patient too. You've got to decide, okay, this is going to take a certain amount of time. The one I've just finished, that's just taken me forever, But
so how long is it for you to create a painting?
That one's been about 3 months, I think. It's taken me to do that one, 2 or 3 months. And then not consistently too, because Lois is the main breadwinner these days. I'm getting to be a man of leisure, so I tend to potter. I do a bit and I stop, and I do a bit and I stop. But I'm picking up pace now because I know I've got quite a bit to do.
Yeah, so it's quite good sometimes having those deadlines to keep you, working towards that, I guess.
Absolutely, and I work quite well with pressure. I'm pretty good. I kind of tend to have a good instinctive knowledge about how many hours I've got and how many hours it's going to take me to finish it. And once it hits that point, I start working fairly frenetically.
Yeah, which can be good.
Can be good.
Yeah, and obviously you can see sort of inspiration that's come from places like Tonga and Spain, and the ocean. apart from, studying people and magazines and other things like that and dreams, where else does your inspiration come from?
I think I said in my little bio, I'm a bit of a magpie. I tend to pick up stuff from everywhere. I was really big on underground cartoons, when I was younger. So Robert Crumb and all those wildly inappropriate underground comics, which I thought were fabulous. I loved those. I loved Salvador Dali. I loved anything. It's just anything and everything. I tend to pick up stuff from everywhere. But say as you say, Tonga was a huge influence. My brother went there first. Matthew went there, and then he said, "I think you're really going to like this place." So I went there, and I adored the place. I just thought I'm never going to. It was almost. He said I almost went there and I never came back. Really, not the same person anyway. And so I loved that place. I loved the bush. I loved the plants. I loved the water. Everything about it. I used to take my sketchbook into the bush and I sketched, all the plants and all the bushes, and I've got all that sort of stuff. But interestingly, one of the places that I get an awful lot of my inspiration for trees and shapes and things like that is from Mesopotamian bas reliefs. Those sculptures that they used, which were very two-dimensional because they're always on a wall, but were fabulous. They're fabulously sculptural and beautiful. Beautiful shapes, like date palms. They just had this incredible way they used to do the fronds and the way they're done. I love that. So an awful lot of what I do, I sort of picked up from there, and I still do. I still go back and troll through, that sort of stuff. When I went to Paris, everybody's running up looking at the Mona Lisa. Well, I went downstairs. I went into the basement. Where they had all the Mesopotamian stuff. Oh, it was just heaven.
Really?
They had they had the sphinxes down there. There was a big sphinx down there, and there was just all these incredible, enormous pieces of winged sort of godlike lions and things they had. God, that's fantastic. So I sketched. I took I still have the little what do you call it? The piece of paper they give you when you first go in that gives you the map of where you're looking. I've still got it sitting in my sketch bags with all my little drawings all over it of all the stuff that I saw in there.
Oh, wow.
So it tends to be fairly eclectic and all. And Spain again was a really interesting. We spent a year. Yesi and I spent a year in Spain. We just lived there for a year and right on the coast. And again, that was a really interesting influence.
You can see some sort of buildings sometimes remind me of Spain, and some of the nature obviously sort of comes into it, doesn't it? And
it does.
Are you kind of combining, do you think, all of these inspirations to make your own sort of characters in response to these things, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think all of it just, I don't think I consciously go about trying to produce a particular look, but I just, what it's sort of almost done is amplified what I naturally had there, and so now I have a whole lot more. If you go in North Africa and Spain, all that Moorish architecture, just unbelievable, beautiful, and very different and sort of square and stucco in the windows, just the way it is. So I've got a lot of that sort of added into what I had, but it sort of tends to sort of enriched a natural inclination I had for buildings and shapes and these beautiful coastal places in Spain where I stayed at a place called La Herradura. It's right on the southern coast. If you go down from Granada virtually right to the coast, and has this incredible headland that's come down, which has appeared in a number of paintings. So just things like that, and it's very much like here. Headlands here, I think, are incredibly iconic almost. You see these beautiful things that go out into the sea. I almost start when I do my paintings with almost like a structure. I almost have like a horizon line and a land, and then headlands coming in. I almost have a structure in which everything goes. And
a place. Do you actually put things into a place mostly?
I think I do, and I'm tending to try and not do that at the moment, to try and not have it so it's so completely locked into that. I started looking at some of those older impressionist artists and stuff, and looking at the looseness of their structures, and I really like those structures. They don't have that, because I was very locked into this sort of very almost like grid-like horizon front, and so now I'm trying to. But it's very hard to get away from that.
Yeah, it would be.
I looked at what really interested me was I was looking at the old Hutu and Kawa books. Do you remember those the little ones? That Hutu and Kawa were a series of New Zealand children's books, and and we had them when we were kids. And when I looked at the structures and the illustrations of the Huronkawa books, boy, it was exactly what I did. It was exactly what I did. I was amazed. I looked at it, and they had the little horizon, they had the little sea, and they got the little foreground and the little tropical plants. And
Really?
Huronkawa doing their thing, and I thought that's really interesting.
Maybe it was just sort of in there subliminally.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. And I think all these other things have sort of almost, they've just, maybe I get attracted to the same things and just, but different versions of it.
Yeah. And it's almost like you're storing all these moments that you've experienced through your life in your head, and that sort of probably comes out in your dreams, and then sort of is just in your thoughts, and then that creates this sort of narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Pretty cool.
The dreams are interesting. You can't beat those. I had one the other day about trying to chase wild animals out of the house, lions and things, coming in through the windows and out through the windows and chasing them down the hall. And my wife just looked at me and said, "Oh, yep, that sounds about right." But
I wonder what that's saying about you.
Yes, exactly.
Your life.
Yes, yeah. Trying to get too uptight, I think. Trying to not allowing life to happen perhaps so much. Trying to all this wildness is within the house, and you're busy trying to get
some order.
The old Tongan broom, the taufale, trying to chase them out the door. So
all that need for control or something.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's it.
It's so interesting, and I guess that sort of idea of putting work into a place, because your works are so narrative, it sort of makes sense to have this sense of place in the narrative. And maybe that helps the viewer to kind of, create that story in their own head when you're providing that sort of place, maybe.
Yeah.
But it'll be really interesting to kind of take it away from that and see what happens.
Sometimes with the dreams, they're interesting because they have an entirely different kind of landscape in them. So if you're true to the dream in terms of the landscape, I think one of the ones on the blog is this one of a surfer coming down a hill. That was quite true to the landscape that was in the dream. It's sort of and it's not necessarily logical, but I have constructed a certain amount of things that I like myself too. There's hills and things in there. I can't resist it. And moons. There's always moons and suns, but
it's not always realistic or sort of.
No.
Yeah.
Far from it. Yeah.
It can be sort of a confused version of a landscape in some ways, or a quirky one at least.
Yeah, that's why I always laugh saying, "Oh, yes, I do landscape painting, but just of a very different kind.
Different form." And so you mentioned Salvador Dali. Are there any other artists who inspire you?
I think. Now it's going to challenge my aging brain to try and think of people's names. I just can't do names these days, man. I walk through the supermarket and it's like, you see all these people, you know these people, but
it's
I cannot
get.
It's terrible.
I know.
Terrible. What's his name? No, I'm not going to be able to get it.
But is it all kind of Dali, kind of, the quirky artists who are quite sort of abstract fantasy kind of
They
feels?
are. All that sort of dreamscape kind of thing was very much like that.
Miro, maybe.
Yeah, Miro. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
The Spanish
artist. The Spanish artist.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. And what do you think you prefer between the painting and the illustration, or does it all kind of blend?
It all kind of blends, but I am actually these days I'm enjoying the painting a lot more, I tend to also be lucky in terms that I have a little more open time these days. It's not so financially critical for me to be doing a lot of illustration work, which has always been in many ways the way I've made my living. But because of our sort of our fluid financial situation between my wife and I, Loisy tends to be working a lot at the moment, has really good work, and sometimes I do, and so she's up at the moment. So I tend to have a little more time. So I tend to like to paint a lot because I've done a lot of books, and I sort of get sometimes a little too characterized into one particular thing. And I would like to do my own books, in fact, actually, at the moment was what I would like to do, because I would like to loosen that up a bit and go back. Because when I very first started doing books, I had a very wild style. It was very, very wild and very offbeat. And it's tended to sort of tighten to these days where I sort of have very particular things that people like that I do or want from me. And I'm and I'm preferring to. I would like to. Do something that's more self-generated in terms of the books as well. But the painting is I'm really enjoying the painting. I like the pace of it. I like the whole creative side of it. And also, of course, the fact is that people are buying them. So that's fabulous. I'm afraid COVID has been the best thing that ever happened to me, I'm afraid, as far as painting goes. I think people suddenly, they weren't going overseas. They were starting to work on their houses. They were starting to do things with their money that were different. And so I think people were buying paintings. People who suddenly thought, if I ever get any extra money, I'll buy that painting. Well, they started buying them. So the paintings have been selling really well. And so I've been having a very nice couple of years, to be honest with you.
That's so good. And it's, you can really see your passion and sort of excitement that's generated from your practice, your painting especially. And, I feel like you've got so much time ahead of you to just keep exploring.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which is exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. So long as I can paint, and it's really interesting because it's interesting to try and keep recreating yourself, because you can get stuck into a particular thing and then it's very difficult to get yourself out of it. I'm quite good I recognize fairly quickly when I'm in that place where I know, like, I'm actually getting sick of this.
Yeah.
and this isn't producing, it's getting too tight, I'm not enjoying it. And so I tend to get the paper out and I'll start doing something completely different. And then if it's good and I like it, that's great, because it kicks you off on a new thing. And so at the moment I'm enjoying my painting because I tend to be sort of into similar. I just feel like I'm into a new area again, and I'm feeling really, I'm sort of like chomping at the bit to get back into the studio and paint. Like I can't wait to get onto this monotone piece today and just to see what happens with this particular thing that I'm going to do, because I can usually tell quite quickly whether something's going to gel or not. Some paintings just stagger along and never come right, and others they immediately begin to come in place, and you think, oh yes, that's looking good, that's looking good. But some aren't like, some aren't like that. Some are very tricky. Sometimes it doesn't matter till you put the last daisy in and it comes right. But that's slightly more rare. You can usually feel as you're going along with the things going in the right direction.
Yeah, which is so great, isn't it? Such a good feeling. And I guess, your work, I know of artists who've done a certain style which has been very popular, and then they start sort of changing it slightly, and then some people don't continue that journey with the artist because they prefer the old stuff kind of thing, which is something that, artists experience sometimes, I guess. And you're, in a way, it's great for you because you have that style that is connected all the way through, but is sort of changing up. The processes are changing slightly, or the way, what you're working on, that kind of thing. But people, I imagine, who've bought stuff a while ago are still going to be interested in what you're producing now, even though it's different, because it's still kind of the sort of artwork they love, kind of thing.
Yes, and that's where you've got to be really devoted to how you produce the work too, and making sure that you're really happy with what you're producing. Because I think sometimes starting into doing something new, you have to be prepared to quietly produce a lot of crap for a while. Because otherwise you can't do it, because your first venture into something sometimes is not particularly successful, and you've got to be quite sort of determined to stick with it till it begins to come into something that you like. It's a difficult, but I've been really lucky over the years, because one of the long term, I haven't mentioned this yet, one of the long term illustration projects which I've been on has been, I've been working for a magazine called the New Zealand Doctor magazine, and Barbara Fountain owns it now. She was part of the team for years, and then she bought it, and they've been fantastic, because I've been working for them for my entire illustration career, and I think I've been working for them for over 30 years now, and I've been doing like 2 illustrations a fortnight-ish for 30-something years. They've got a massive kind of collection of interesting things, and they've been really good, because they've let me do. Every time I felt like changing, they just said, yes, good, go ahead and do it. So I started with a particular side, and then I just do something completely different, then something completely different. And I've been really experimental right through that whole period. And so I've got a 30-year thing where I've changed probably, 7 or 8 times, significantly changed the sort of style I've done. So I tend to I tend to like moving on. I don't like getting stuck with things, and so it's just a matter of trying to produce something that you're happy with then. Because sometimes I think, again, people, as you say, if they start a new practice, sometimes they're so well versed and so refined in their old practice, their new practice isn't quite doing the same thing. So
or people just aren't connecting in the same way.
No.
So what are you making for this doctor magazine? What kind of work?
Well, I've got various different things, but at the moment mostly we've got a thing called the how to treat section, which is like a every fortnight you get a medical condition. I have an encyclopedic medical knowledge these days as well, because I've had to read, an article on some medical condition every 2 weeks. So it can make you a little neurotic though. You keep reading, think, oh, that sounds like me, but it's the how to treat is fascinating, and so at various times I've been quite offbeat and amusing with it, and then various times you've got to be a little more sensitive, because some subjects people don't really want to laugh at, but I tend to think illustration, you sort of need to be able to have a reasonable laugh. So I've done some. I think I've had a couple where people complained.
Really?
Yeah. So I had one. I think there's a woman wrote in and said she couldn't read the article without putting a coffee cup on the illustration. So that was.
And what sort of, is it like a cartoon? It's a comic-y sort of.
Well, it's an illustration. I think the piece that you've got a piece in there which is on menopause, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah, so that's in your blog post. I'll put a note to that.
Okay, good. So you tend to sort of try to get a take on a particular subject that is not too serious and not too literal, but actually lends itself to the underlying story of it. So it's trying to sort of pick an interesting sort of way of looking at it. And so I've done those for years.
That's really interesting, and that would make a great exhibition, wouldn't it? Like a retrospective of your
absolutely
connection.
That's a book. Barbara and I have been thinking about a book for that forever, and we just haven't worked out a format, or haven't been sort of actually got ourselves down with a coffee and a table to actually work out how we're going to do it. But that would make a lovely book.
Great book.
Interesting book. Yeah,
and seeing the development over the years.
The problem was trying to remember what some of I looked at the old ones and I have no idea what some of them are so offbeat. I can't even imagine what they were about. But
that's so good. And do you actually ever sort of do any collaborative work with other artists, or are you more just with the illustration? The people you're involved with.
Yeah, probably just more the illustration. I sort of with my brothers, because Matthew and I have done we've done quite a number of, Matthew and Luke and I have done a number of books together. But Matthew and I recently have done some books for Penguin Books. And he's done the conceptual idea, and I've done the illustration. So we collaborate like that. We've got a number of books with them over the last few years, which are doing well. Again, on the blog, there's another piece, the boy with the incredibly curly hair and the power shirt. Yeah, he's out of one of those books. But not necessarily collaborative with other artists. I tend to be a bit of a solo flyer in that regard.
Are, I guess.
Yes.
And do you have like a network of artists, or sort of friends who are artists who sort of you feel supported by? Do you think?
I'm very on my own. I have people who I came through AUT with, and people who are doing their own practice and stuff. But we tend to just we bump into each other when we do. But I tend to one thing about you've got to be able to keep yourself buoyant. Sometimes you're in the same place, you're in the same house day in, day out, painting and stuff. I've got to get out, and fortunately one of my practices is to go to a coffee shop and paint, or to go and draw. I've got to get myself out and do a few things, because it can get a bit bit cabin fever. Yeah. But
and you get into your own head a little bit too much sometimes.
Boy, that's
that's another podcast.
Yes, that's another podcast. Yeah, exactly. Or a therapy session or something.
It's so interesting though, isn't it? How it is for people working from home. And do you ever sort of find, obviously with your illustration, you've been sort of held to certain deals and contracts and whatever, but do you ever feel with your painting that you just kind of shut down and get a creative block?
Not too bad. What I do is I get stylistically kind of corner myself. I get stylistically cornered. And so I get to a point where I know I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, and I know it's not singing the right song, as I said before. I know it's not. And so I tend to have to then try and back up and try and move in a different direction or do something different. I don't so much get stuck for ideas. I think I have been at times, but I tend to sort of, the areas that I get my ideas from tend to be reasonably spontaneous. I mean, the old dream journal is, you're going to get something fresh every week. And
I love that. Have you written down your wild animals in the house?
Oh, yeah.
That's in the journal?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The general theme of dreams seems to me at the moment, this sort of emptying out seems to be really interesting. Staying in some overcrowded tent and thinking, how the hell am I going to clear this up before I go? And suddenly realize all I've got to do is put my few things in a backpack and leave. So, that kind of thing. And a really interesting one about Santana the other day, on a sort of empty lot where suddenly all these workers were suddenly hauling everything off this empty lot. And it just disappeared. And so there's nothing on there except the clay of a sort of almost like a new building project. And then went to sit in my car, and it was also nothing but a pile of clay on the ground. So this interesting thing about disappearing. And so I can interpret that visually in all sorts of ways. And so
that's amazing. It's like a gift, isn't it? And the fact that you can actually remember your dreams.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, they come and go. Sometimes I have a patch where they're not so there, but often they are. And so I'll just.
Why? I don't have very interesting dreams.
You probably do.
I don't really remember them.
Yeah, put a pencil and a book next to your bed and see if they.
So you do that through the night,
I can do, but.
Do you normally remember in the morning?
Generally, I've been a bit more lazy on that front. I just generally, if I remember something in the morning, I just write it down. But I've got a nice big fat journal full of,
It sounds like you never will have a shortage of ideas.
No, I could mine all the old ones. I've got about 4 big fat books full of dreams from, way back.
So
I could go and mine all those.
Yeah. Wow, a lifetime of inspiration. And so, what would you say, Fraser, to your younger artistic self?
To my younger artistic self, to let go of other people, to try and very early on weed other people out of your head, in terms of, because people tend to. There's a really good book. Julia Cameron wrote a couple of really good books called, I think, Walking the World and The Artist's Way. Were 2 books she wrote about, and she was really good about that, being aware when somebody says something and it gets into your head and it, like a little hook, and being just aware of the fact that you can happily pursue your own artistic path and do it without being so concerned about other people. And that could be a general theme for me, but I would say something like that. Just be a bit braver, Just if you really want to do something, do it. Go and see somebody. You can plan things in your head for hours and hours and weeks, and then when you actually go and do it, it actually works out, or it doesn't within 5 minutes. So you can waste a lot of energy being in your head.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And we do get a bit wiser the older we get, I guess, hopefully.
We do. Yeah, I think so.
Hopefully. And just to finish off, I can't remember what I was just about to ask you, actually. What was it? Something really super interesting. Okay, so I've remembered. It was, what do you love most about what you do?
I think that it is something that's really well suited to whatever my most internal passion is. That it's something in which I get to express something spiritual, something visual, an idea, very different. And also I tend to be a person who I like to be different. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but Enneagram 4s, you got to be anything but regular. You've got to be different. So it gives me a chance to be different in a way that's creative and interesting. It's got a good way of expressing that differentness. And as you say, hopefully you're mature and you're not being different in an obnoxious way. That's been around a bit, but
but hopefully you still got a little bit of that wild child in you.
Yes, there's still there's still plenty of that. Yes, there is still plenty of that. But I just find it's a career that suits me intrinsically, really suits me, and I really enjoy it. And I love painting too. I love the actual producing of images. It's something that I really, really enjoy and putting up. And also, I find that if you're getting good feedback from people, also it's something in which you feel good about yourself, because people are saying your books are lovely, this is great, the painting's great, I bought your painting, my wife and I love it, we look at it and it reminds us of this and that. It's a lovely process.
Yeah, it's a real privilege, isn't it?
It is a privilege, yeah. And my wife's super. She just says the more you're yourself, the more you actually just get into this and forget about any other ideas about what you should or shouldn't, the better off you are. She's been she's a treasure in that regard, and in many regards.
Yeah, I can see that you have a real connection with her. Which is so nice.
We both say that what we do for each other in a really large degree is make space and give each other permission to do whatever we want to do. She does it with her work. She does care work, and she's fabulous at it. She's gifted. I'd say she's gifted at it, but she sort of dresses for it too. She puts on these incredible sort of cat ears, and she wears incredibly interesting eclectic clothes, and she goes and it's sort of halfway between care and entertaining. She does this incredible sort of role, and so we both give each other permission to do the thing to 100%. Yeah.
Sounds brilliant. What a great partnership. Yeah, so good. Okay, Fraser, we are going to have to wrap it up, but thank you very, very much for coming out to windy Muriwai today.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been lovely.
Yeah, it's been so nice to chat. I've really enjoyed what you've had to say, and yeah, it's been a fun morning, and I think you with your pink shirt and your scarf and your wavy grey hair,
yes,
looks sort of the part. And as you say, you're your own person, and you've been such an interesting person to speak with. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. I was saying I think I had a number one. I had a number one on top of my head for a number of years with the old shaver, and then suddenly I thought one day, I wonder what would happen if I just left it alone. So
there you go. There it is.
Thank you.